This is a story podcast. In this video, we will present you the classical novel named The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. The Alchemist follows the story of a young Andalusian shepherd who travels to the pyramids of Egypt to find a treasure he has recurrently dreamed about. On his journey, he has to overcome multiple obstacles, through which he learns valuable life lessons. Let's listen it together.
Santiago is a young shepherd boy in the Andalusian region of Spain. At dusk one day, he arrives at an abandoned church. The roof has caved in, and a sycamore tree grows up through the open space. Santiago spends the night in the church with his flock of sheep. He lays his jacket down on the floor, and uses the book he's reading as a pillow to rest his head on. Santiago awakes early the next morning before dawn. He has had a dream, one he has had before, but he wakes up before the dream has ended. He notices that his sheep awake at the same time as he does. Santiago reflects that they are used to him and have adjusted to his schedule, and then he realizes that perhaps it is the other way around, and he has adjusted to their schedule. Santiago wakes up the last of his sheep. He knows them each by name. Sometimes he reads aloud to his sheep, and often speaks to them. For the past few days he has spoken to them about only one thing, the daughter of a merchant who lives in a nearby village. Santiago met the girl the year before when he sold his sheep's wool to her father. Santiago remembers the events of the year before. The shop was busy when he went to sell wool to the merchant, so the man asked him to wait. As Santiago waited, he read. The merchant's daughter approached him and asked him about his reading. She wondered how he, a shepherd, learned to read. Santiago told her that he learned in school, and she wondered why he is a shepherd if he knows how to read. Santiago tried to avoid answering this question. Instead, he told her stories about his travels, and as time passed, he wished he could give up traveling and stay with her in her village. Now, approximately 1 year later, Santiago will return to the same village. He is excited and looks forward to seeing the merchant's daughter. He reflects that shepherds, like other wandering men, will always eventually find a town where someone persuades them to give up their wandering lifestyle. Santiago reflects on the contentment of his sheep as he travels, thinking that they, unlike him, never have to make decisions. The sheep appear to only be concerned with food and water. Santiago thinks that if he suddenly became a monster and decided to kill his sheep, they would be surprised and would not expect this change. This is because they trust him and are no longer wild. Santiago is surprised at these strange thoughts, and wonders if they're caused by the unrest of his recurring dream. Santiago is grateful for his jacket, which keeps him warm, although at the height of day the heat is intense and he is sorry that he has to carry his jacket. However, in the cold evenings he is glad to have it. He reflects that one needs to be prepared for change. Like the jacket, Santiago has a purpose to his existence. He believes his purpose is to travel, and he has spent 2 years exploring the Andalusian terrain. Santiago learned to read because he attended a seminary until he was 16. His parents wanted him to become a priest, which would have been a great accomplishment for a boy from a simple family. As Santiago studied to become a priest, however, he was not happy, so he summoned the courage to tell his father that instead of being a priest, he wanted to travel. Santiago's father told Santiago that people from all over the world pass through their village. And while these visitors seem to be seeking new things, the world elsewhere is no better than, or even very different from, what exists in their home village. Santiago replies that he wants to see castles in towns where other people live, not just the castle that's next door. Santiago's father says that visitors to the village wish they could stay forever, and Santiago replies that he, in his turn, would like to see the places where the visitors come from. Santiago's father presents the obstacle of money. He says that among their people, the only ones who travel are shepherds, so Santiago decides to be a shepherd. The next day, Santiago's father gives his son 3 Spanish gold coins. He tells Santiago to use them to buy his flock and to take the opportunity to travel, and he gives the boy his blessing. Santiago sees in his father his own desire to travel, but his father has never been able to fulfill this dream because he has had to struggle to survive as a farmer. As Santiago travels, he thinks back on the conversation he had with Santiago's father, and it makes him happy. He has already seen many castles and met many women, and he owns a jacket, a book, and a flock of sheep. These things are part of living out his dream. He feels that he could not have found God in the seminary. The world is massive, the possibilities are endless, and he relishes every opportunity to discover new things. Santiago reflects that his sheep don't recognize these possibilities. Because the sheep focus only on food and water, they don't see that the places through which they travel are new every day. Santiago thinks that perhaps all people have this tendency. Since he met the merchant's daughter, he has not thought of new women, but only repeatedly of her. Santiago does not want to consider the possibility that some other shepherd has already asked for her hand in marriage. He thinks that the possibility of a dream being realized is what keeps life interesting. He also remembers that in the next town he'll reach, Tarifa, there is an old fortune-teller who is able to interpret dreams. Santiago arrives in Tarifa and meets the fortune-teller, who leads him from her living room to a back room where she practices her craft. The room has a table, 2 chairs, and an image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. The two sit down and the woman begins to pray. To Santiago, it sounds like a gypsy prayer. Santiago has already met gypsies in his travels, and he has heard that others do not trust gypsies. Rumors about gypsies say that they make pacts with the devil and kidnap children. Many are frightened of them, but Santiago calms his fears by noting the fortune-teller's Sacred Heart of Jesus. The woman examines Santiago's hands. Santiago is nervous, and his hands begin to shake. He says to the woman that he didn't come here for her to read his palm. He considers paying her and leaving without learning anything about his dream. The fortune-teller says that she knows that Santiago came to learn about his dream. She adds that dreams are the language of God, so when God speaks through a dream in our language, as she can interpret it. But if he speaks in the language of the soul, only the dreamer can understand it. Santiago decides to take a chance on the fortune-teller either way. He tells her that he's had the same dream twice and he describes it. In the dream, he is in a field with his sheep, and a child appears. The child plays with the sheep, but suddenly she takes Santiago by the hand and they are both transported to the Egyptian pyramids. Santiago pauses in his telling to see if the fortune-teller knows what the Egyptian pyramids are. At the Egyptian pyramids, he continues, the child says to Santiago, "If you come here, you will find hidden treasure." Just as she is about to show Santiago the location of the treasure, he wakes up. The fortune-teller is silent for a while. Then she says that she is not going to charge Santiago anything for her consultation, but that if he finds the treasure, she wants 1/10 of the total in payment. Santiago laughs and asks her to interpret the dream. She says that first he must swear that he will keep his promise about the treasure and her payment. Santiago swears that he will. The fortune teller asks him to swear again while looking at the image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Then she says that the dream is in the language of the world, so she is able to interpret it. She says Santiago must go to the pyramids in Egypt. There, he will find a treasure that will make him a rich man. Santiago is annoyed. He feels that he didn't need the interpretation to realize this about his dream. The fortune teller says that the interpretation of the dream was difficult, because the simple things in life are the most extraordinary. It takes wisdom to realize and understand simplicity. Santiago asks her how he should get to Egypt, but the fortune teller says that she only interprets dreams, and doesn't deal in making them a reality. Santiago asks her, "But what if I never get to Egypt?" The woman says that in that case, I don't get paid. Santiago leaves disappointed. But he remembers that he has several practical things to do, so he goes to the market for food and he trades his book in for a different one. It is a hot day, and he sits on a bench in the plaza. Santiago knows a lot of people in Tarifa. He likes traveling because he always makes new friends. If you see the same people every day, Santiago thinks, these people become a part of your life, and people who are a part of your life want you to change, and when you don't change, others become angry. All people seem to have a clearer idea of how others should lead their lives. Santiago decides to wait until the sun sinks lower before taking his flock back to the fields. Santiago starts to read from the book he bought. As he reads, an old man sits down next to him and tries to talk to him. The old man points to people in the plaza and asks what they're doing. The boy answers that they're working, and he tries to put the old man off by pretending he's busy reading. In fact, Santiago is imagining shearing his sheep in front of the merchant's daughter. He is also trying to remember good stories to tell her. Most of his stories come from books, but he plans to tell them as if he has experienced them himself. Meanwhile, the old man asks if he might have a sip of Santiago's wine. The old man then asks about the book Santiago is reading. Santiago feels he should be respectful of the elderly, so he holds his book out to the man. The old man looks at the book and then says it is an important book, but also an irritating book. Santiago is surprised that the old man knows how to read, and that he has already read the book. The old man says that this book says the same thing as almost all the other books in the world. It says that people are unable to choose their personal legends, and that everyone believes the world's greatest lie. Santiago wonders what the world's greatest lie is. The old man says that the world's greatest lie is that we do not control what happens to us. Santiago says that this has never happened to him. He did not want to be a priest, and so he became a shepherd instead. The old man says that being a shepherd is a much better fit for Santiago, because he likes to travel. Santiago notices the old man's clothing. He looks like an Arab, which is not unusual, as Africa is only a few hours from Tarifa. The boy asks where the old man is from, and the old man says that he was born in Salem. Because he does not know where Salem is, but also does not want to appear ignorant, Santiago asks the old man what Salem is like. Then he asks the old man what he does in Salem. The old man laughs and says that he is the king of Salem. The old man introduces himself as Melchizedek, and he asks Santiago how many sheep he has. The boy says that he has enough sheep. Melchizedek says that he can't help Santiago if he feels that he has enough sheep. Santiago grows irritated, because he doesn't feel that he needs help. He asks for his book back, and says he needs to leave. The old man says that if Santiago gives him 1/10 of his sheep, then he will tell him how to find his hidden treasure. Santiago remembers his dream, and suddenly everything becomes clear. He realizes that the fortune teller and the old man may be working together to get money from him. Melchizedek picks up a stick and begins to write in the sand. As he moves, something bright is revealed underneath his cloak. Santiago is momentarily blinded by its shine before Melchizedek quickly covers it again. Melchizedek writes in the sand the names of Santiago's father and mother, and the name of the seminary Santiago attended. Santiago also reads the name of the merchant's daughter, which he hadn't even known before, among other things that no one would be able to know about himself. Santiago realizes that Melchizedek is indeed a king, and he wonders why a king would talk with him, a shepherd. Melchizedek says that the most important reason is that Santiago has succeeded in discovering his personal legend. Santiago asks what a personal legend is, and Melchizedek explains that it's the thing you have always wanted to accomplish. When you're young, you're certain of what this thing is. But at some point in everyone's life, your convictions about your dream begin to vanish, as you think you won't be able to realize your personal legend. This doesn't make much sense to Santiago. Melchizedek explains that the one great truth is that no matter who you are or what it is you do, your true desires come from the soul of the universe. Having a true desire is the same as having a mission. Santiago questions whether this is true, if all one wants to do is travel or marry a merchant's daughter. Melchizedek says yes, and that the soul of the world is nourished by happiness. Therefore, our only real obligation is to realize our destiny. When you want something, the universe helps you to achieve it, Melchizedek concludes. Melchizedek and Santiago sit in silence for a while. Melchizedek asks Santiago why he tends a flock of sheep. Santiago answers that it is because he likes to travel. Melchizedek points out a baker in the plaza. He tells Santiago that that man had also wanted to travel. He has not yet done so, because he does not realize that people at any time in their life should follow their dreams, which they're always capable of achieving. Santiago says the man should also have decided to become a shepherd. Melchizedek explains that the baker chose his profession because it would give him more recognition than being a shepherd would. Parents would rather see their daughter marry a baker than a shepherd. Santiago thinks sadly of the merchant's daughter. Melchizedek explains that other people's opinions of his profession eventually became more important to the baker than his personal legend. Santiago asks Melchizedek why he is telling him all this. Melchizedek says that Santiago was trying to realize his personal legend, but now he's at the point of giving up. Melchizedek says that sometimes he appears in the form of a solution or a good idea at a crucial moment, just when somebody is about to give up on his or her personal legend. He tells the story of appearing to a miner in the form of a stone. The miner had been mining for emeralds, and just when he was about to give up, Melchizedek appeared as a stone that rolled up to the miner's foot. The miner threw the stone away in frustration, with such force that it broke open another stone, revealing the emerald inside. Melchizedek says that people learn early in their lives what their personal legend is, but maybe that's also why they also give up on it early. Santiago reminds the old man that he had mentioned his treasure. Melchizedek says that if Santiago wants to learn about his treasure, he will have to give him 1/10 of his flock. Santiago wonders if could instead offer the old man 1/10 of his treasure. The old man says that if Santiago starts out by promising something he doesn't even have, he won't want to keep working toward getting his treasure. Santiago tells Melchizedek about his promise to the fortune teller. The old man says that it's good that Santiago has learned that everything in life has a price. He tells Santiago to meet him in the square at the same time the next day, with 1/10 of his flock, and then he will tell Santiago how to find his treasure. Melchizedek leaves. Santiago tries to read, but he is no longer able to focus on his book. He goes up to the bakery and buys a loaf of bread, and while he does so he considers telling the baker what the old man said about him. But he decides to leave things as they are. If he said anything, the baker would spend time questioning the profession that he has worked hard to achieve. Then Santiago wanders to the city gates, towards the ticket window where people buy tickets to Africa. He knows that Egypt is in Africa. The man behind the window asks if he can help Santiago, but Santiago says, "And maybe tomorrow." The ticket seller says to his assistant that Santiago must be just another dreamer without enough money to travel. Santiago remembers his flock, and decides he should go back to being a shepherd. On his way back to his sheep, he climbs the stone ramp that leads to the top of the city's castle. From that point, he can see Africa in the distance, and he can see almost the entire city. Santiago reflects that he is divided between pursuing his treasure and staying with his flock. He must choose between something he is familiar with and something unknown that he wants to have. Santiago also considers the merchant's daughter, but reflects that she does not depend on him like his sheep do, and perhaps she doesn't even remember him. Santiago reflects that he left his father and mother behind, and they have gotten used to this change. His sheep, too, will get used to being left behind. The boy feels jealous of the wind that is blowing because it is free, but he realizes that there is nothing to hold him back from pursuing his dream, and from having the same freedom. The next day, Santiago meets Melchizedek at noon, and brings him 6 sheep. He tells Melchizedek that he has already sold all his other sheep to his friend, and that his friend had always dreamed of being a shepherd. Melchizedek says that this is called the principle of favorability. In other words, it is an example of beginner's luck. There is a force that wants Santiago to realize his personal legend, and so it encourages him early on with a taste of success. Santiago asks Melchizedek where the treasure is. Melchizedek says it is in Egypt near the pyramids, which Santiago already knows. Melchizedek tells him that to find the treasure he will have to follow omens prepared by God. Santiago remembers that his grandfather had taught him about some omens. Melchizedek opens his cape and shows Santiago that he wears a breastplate of gold covered with precious stones. Santiago again realizes that Melchizedek is really a king. Melchizedek offers Santiago a white stone and a black stone from the breastplate. He tells him that the stones are called Urim and Thummim. The black stone signifies a yes, and the white stone no. These fortune-telling stones will help Santiago read the omens. However, Melchizedek cautions Santiago to try to make his own decisions, and not just rely on the stones. Melchizedek offers him final words of advice, saying that he must not forget that everything he deals with is only one thing and nothing else. He must not forget the language of omens. And most importantly, he must not forget to keep following his personal legend until it is achieved. Melchizedek also leaves Santiago with a story. In the story, a shopkeeper sends his son to learn the secret of happiness from the wisest man in the world. The boy travels through the desert until he comes upon a beautiful castle where the wise man lives. Inside the castle are many people, including tradesmen and musicians, and there are people talking happily among platters of delicious food. The wise man is speaking to all of these visitors. When the boy has a chance to speak to him, the wise man listens attentively to the boy's question. Then he suggests that the boy look around the palace for 2 hours and then return to him. He asks that while the boy looks around, he also carry a spoonful of oil without letting the oil spill. The boy does this, and when he returns to the wise man, he reports that he did not observe any of the wonders of the palace, because his only concern had been to keep the oil from spilling. The wise man tells him to go back and observe the marvels of his world. The boy does so, and this time he observes everything, but in the process of observing he accidentally lets all the oil spill from the spoon. The wise man says that the only advice he can give him is that the secret of happiness is to see all the marvels of the world, but to also never forget the oil in the spoon. Santiago says nothing in response to the story, as he understands its message. Even though he may travel, he should never forget about his sheep. Melchizedek, the king of Salem, sits on the wall of an old fort in Tarifa that afternoon. He is accompanied by the sheep, who are uneasy with their new owner. He watches a ship leaving the port and knows he will never see Santiago again. He hopes that Santiago will be successful in his quest, even though he knows that the boy will quickly forget his name. He wishes that the boy would remember him and speak of him as Melchizedek, the king of Salem. He looks to the skies, a bit ashamed, and speaks to his God, saying that he knows this admission to be the vanity of vanities. Santiago arrives in Morocco, Africa, and he goes to a bar in Tangier. He sees men smoking from a giant pipe, and other people following ritual prayers, kneeling and touching their foreheads to the ground. Santiago dismisses this as a practice of infidels. He feels ill and alone, and he doesn't speak Arabic, the language of this country. He tries to concentrate on getting to his treasure. Santiago now has a substantial amount of money from the sale of his sheep, and he thought a lot about omens as he was crossing the strait to Africa. He reflects that his sheep were always aware of omens in the natural world, like signs that there was water or danger nearby. He reflects that if God can lead sheep so well, he must also be able to lead men. A young man approaches Santiago and speaks in Spanish. Santiago tells him that he needs to get to the Egyptian pyramids, and he asks the young man if he will serve as his guide. He offers to pay him to do so. The young man points out that to cross the Sahara Desert, one needs money, and he needs to know beforehand if Santiago has enough money. Santiago takes out his money and shows it to the young man. The owner of the bar comes over and exchanges a few angry words with the young man. The young man tells Santiago that they should leave, but as they do so the owner grabs Santiago and begins to speak at him angrily. Santiago doesn't know what's happening, but he trusts his new friend. The young man tells Santiago that they could get to the pyramids by tomorrow, but they'll have to buy 2 camels. Santiago and his new friend walk together through the busy streets of Tangier. Santiago never takes his eyes off the young man, who is holding his money, but suddenly the most beautiful sword he has ever seen distracts him. After a moment, He turns to his new friend to ask him to inquire about the price of the sword, but in that moment he realizes that the young man has vanished with his money. Santiago is feeling sorry for himself as the sun sets, reflecting that between sunrise and sunset of the same day, he went from being a successful shepherd to being stranded with no money in a country where he does not speak the language. The marketplace has emptied. Santiago reflects that with his sheep at least he was happy, but now he feels bitter and distrustful of all people, because he has been betrayed. He opens his pouch to see what of his possessions are left. All he has are his book, his jacket, and the stones Urim and Thummim. He looks at the stones and feels relieved, because perhaps he could sell them and buy a return ticket to Spain. He reflects that the owner of the bar had been angry because he had been trying to tell him the young man was a thief. Santiago decides to try an experiment with the stones. He asks if the old man's blessing is still with them, and takes a stone from his pouch. It is the stone that means a yes. He asks if he is going to find his treasure, but when he reaches into his pouch, Urim and Thummim fall through a hole in the pouch. He realizes that this may be an omen. Santiago picks up the stones to put them back in the pouch, although he feels that if he lost the stones it wouldn't be too significant, because he has promised to make his own decisions. He feels more confident now, and looks around the Tangier marketplace realizing that it is not a strange place, but a new one, and that opportunities to experience new places are what he has always wanted. He tells himself that he is an adventurer looking for treasure. Santiago is suddenly shaken awake. He had fallen asleep in the middle of the marketplace, and it is now the next day. Instinctively, he looks around for his sheep before realizing where he is. He walks through the marketplace, stopping to help a candy seller assemble his stall. The smile on the candy seller's face reminds the boy of the mysterious old king. The boy realizes that the candy seller is doing the very thing that he wants to do with his life. Like Melchizedek, Santiago can now sense whether a person is near or far from his personal legend just by looking at him. The candy seller offers Santiago a sweet in exchange for his help. Santiago reflects that he and the candy seller were able to understand each other perfectly, although they do not speak the same language. He thinks that there must be a language that does not depend on words, the same language he used to communicate with his sheep. He sees